just to cut the long story short, what actually become the result at the end of the day? Were you able to manage it? Did you save the company? What happened?
All right. So it, it it took about, so it started in 2015, and the crisis was full on for about 2 years. So it was a lot of meetings with the banks, with all kinds of people. We got in a private investigator to investigate everything, get a lot of information. That was very, very helpful. And the end result was I was very stubborn for 2 years, saying no. I took the job to save the family company, so a sale was not of interest to me. And there was also a little bit of luck with it, that forest land prices in Austria went up about 40% in the time that I was managing the crisis. So that was a very, very important part for us to later make the decision that we sold the family business in the end. Forestry in Austria has a very low yield. So on the value of your land and of your forest, you make about 1.5%, which when your land is used as collateral for loan, makes it very difficult to service the interest rates and then also pay back the loan long term. And with the prices going up in forest land, with a few other negotiations we had with the tax department in Austria and lots of other things, it was the best for us to sell. So we did that.
So at the end of the day, the family managed to get back something from the deal, right?
Yes, so when you talk in financial terms, at the loss that we encountered was about 40% of what was invested in the fraudulent company. So we recovered about 60%.
Now, just before we go into your strategy or how you help people and what are even the nature of family business crisis, some of the people that come to you, I want to ask you, when the lawyer nominated you as a crisis manager for the family business, did you feel you were prepared at the time? What did you do to be able to do this if that was your first time?
Well, I obviously felt that I was ready to do this for some reason. But as I said, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So was I prepared? Not at all. I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning. So it's what makes a crisis. A crisis is a really dangerous situation with a lot of time pressure, and there's a lot of at stake. So the pressure is high, and one of the main reasons I managed to get around it was also that I was still quite young and I could deal with the pressure. And what helped a lot was I started learning. I was like, okay, this is overwhelming. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to start reading. So I read a lot of books about crisis management or managing yourself properly. So in a crisis, you have scarce resources, and the biggest resource you have is yourself. So you need to be very careful with yourself. And I didn't do that for the first 6 months. I was very, not very careful with myself, and it did fire back after 6 months. So I had to make some changes. At the beginning, I wrote my master's thesis. I still kept my job that I had. And after 6 months of doing crisis management, working at my job and writing my master's thesis, I had to let something go. So I quit my job to focus on the crisis because it was too much. So yeah, to answer your question, I was not, I thought I was ready, but I was not really ready at all. And it's very difficult to be ready for a crisis.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Now, because this is your job now, you help people to, of course, manage the crisis so that they can come out of it successful. What would be your description of crisis in a family business? Help us understand that.
Well, so a family business adds a little bit more complexity to the whole topic of crisis than you have in other companies, because you have the crisis you can have can come from different areas. So if there's a crisis in your business, that's a business crisis. But you can also have crisis in your family, and they can, a crisis in the family can put the business into crisis as well, and vice versa, of course. So in our case, the business crisis triggered a crisis in the family itself as well. So while a family is a great resource, it is also a great danger. So to give you an example, in about 80% of wealth that is lost for a family, the reasons for it are from the family itself. So usually a crisis is triggered in the family that leads to them losing wealth. There's a study by, I can't remember the names of that was being done, but there were families interviewed and that lost their wealth and asked what the reasons were, and mostly it's due to the family members having some kind of crisis. They fight with each other. Succession planning wasn't set up. The family member in charge suddenly dies without anybody knowing what's going on in the family business. Things like that. So that's what is really important in a family business, that you can have an external crisis, that is an external event that can trigger a crisis, and then you can have internal crises, which are internal events. And you can have them in the family business and the family.
All right. Now, thinking back to this particular episode in your family, which sort of drag you into becoming a professional in this area, is there something that you could sort of think back to, maybe around you in Austria, of people that have similar situation and how they also came out of it? Because I understand after you have gotten this mission, I call it a mission, to save the family business, you needed to read, because you weren't really ready, but you were available to take up the challenge. Now you need to equip yourself with knowledge. So maybe at that time you also try to look around, either there are people that face similar situation. So help me with that, if there is something you find around.
No, so what was very important for me back then also was I got a mentor. So someone in our network, he is a crisis manager for a bank. So it wasn't necessarily a family business, but it was somebody with a lot of experience in managing crisis. So the tips he gave were very, very good. A friend of mine is a professional in asset recovery and research. So he helped a lot, and he was also a mentor to me that was very, very helpful. At the time I managed a crisis, I didn't look so much into other families that went through crisis. I managed to get a few mentors who had a similar situation. So another mentor I managed to acquire through at the time was someone who had a similar situation when he was young. He took over the family estate, also a forestry company, and they were also too much in debt. So he now works at the bank and gave me some input there. So quite a few bankers.
Okay, now for people who are maybe in similar situation like yours, and yet they have not got into that situation yet. The business have not yet burst, no?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to understand what you think can be the signs that something might be wrong, so that it can be fixed before it becomes a crisis.
Well, that's usually a bit difficult. I mean, it depends. So in crisis, you have three different kinds of crisis. You have a sustained crisis, that is an event that is reoccurring. That's an example, for example, would be that one of the family members takes drugs and ends up negatively in the press regularly. So that's something that happens at regular intervals. So it's a sustained crisis. You can have sudden crises, which are sudden events, also called black swan events, like COVID, for example, which we just had. Those are very difficult to see coming, which in the definition, because they're sudden. And then you have latent crises. Those are crises that build up slowly. Like, for example, a succession dispute in the family. At the beginning, might not trigger anything that's big or important, but it will build up, and there will come a point when it accelerates drastically and things blow up. So for For sustained crises, usually that's very easy to deal with because you know it will be coming again, and it's pretty. It happens again and again and again.